Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Right Time Concert Diary series. This is exclusive to our YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the Right Time YouTube channel. We've got all kinds of things that does not make it to the audio feed, so be sure to check us out right here. We've already done entries on Anderson .Paak at the Hollywood Bowl. We've also done one on Stevie Wonder at Madison Square Garden, and now we've got one on Sturgill Simpson live at Forest Hills in Queens, New York City. Now, unrelated somewhat, but whatever. I went from going to no concerts this summer to like three of my all-time like top 15 or 20 of favorites. Not greatest necessarily, but favorites, and saw them all in a run of a month, right? Sturgill is the last one. Now, this was an interesting show for me, and one that I wasn't exactly sure how it would go. I did everything I could to resist all the tracks that people were sending out in videos and everything else, but I had a general idea about what some of the surprises would be. But I worked really hard to try to forget what they were going to be, although one of them, obviously, I could not forget, and we'll get to a little bit later. Let me start by saying this. The venue matters. I went and saw Anderson .Paak at the Hollywood Bowl. It is an iconic venue, obviously, but also a venue with screens and everything else, right? Like it is set up for the modern concert experience. Forest Hills is not. Forest Hills is where they used to play the US Open. And if you've ever been there, you'll understand what I'm talking about here. It almost feels like you're going to watch a concert at like the Coliseum or something like that. Like it is an old stone stadium setup. And it's really cool, but that's important to know when we talk about what kind of place it is and what the amenities are, which is to say, if you're doing a show at Forest Hills, all you've got is your band and the lights. There is nothing else. You're not going to be able to fake this. You're not going to be able to hide this. You are going to have to play your way out of that bad boy. And for a venue that I Googled it, and they said the capacity was 13,000 people. Right. So what they'll do is they'll fill out the ground level with GA standing. And then from there, you've got people in the bleachers and it goes up. I cannot personally conceive of a venue that has that many people and that sort of setup and no screens. There may be other places, right? Like I'm not pretending like I've done a thorough inventory of this, but this is a thing that really, really stands out. And it becomes a thing that's important when talking about a show for Sturgill, where I have watched lots of his YouTube stuff. It's mostly stuff from smaller venues when he's getting going, right? So it looks all sweaty and grimy and the lights are funny and everything else. And it's just really him and that band, and they are rocking out. Is he a country act? Ostensibly, but the flavor of the show is absolutely rock. The energy of it is absolutely rock. You've seen that. It's one thing to do a show like that in a smaller venue. It's even one thing to do a show like that, I'd make the argument, like at a concert hall or a civic center. It's another to try to do that for this many people. That's the call that they made. They just tried to play their way through it. And I have notes, but I will let Sean ask a couple of questions that may get into some of the notes.
Bo, you mentioned, Forest Hills Stadium and how much you love it. I'm curious, how was Sturgill in that venue versus some of the other acts you've seen?
The last act I saw there was Crunk Ben, which was interesting because it was like, that is a crowd that felt very Brooklyn. I can't think of any other way to put it, right? Like the people who dress funny in a very Brooklyn sort of way. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, or you're not. I'm sorry. Maybe I've been living in New York City for too long. You know what I'm talking about. The Brooklyn weirdo was in full effect, which is much different than the Manhattan weirdo. Anyway, this one here, this is a dude that does quote unquote country music, and it's in New York City. I was fascinated to see who was there. Now, I went with my brother. We were the only black people in attendance who weren't with our white boyfriends, from what I could tell. So that's kind of the crowd breakdown that you have. What you also had, though, at least to me, was, I don't want to say an inconsistent energy, but I did not feel like I was surrounded by diehard fans. And what I mean by that is the energy for the covers felt like more than the energy for his best songs. Now, you can make the argument that he's the sort of act that doesn't have like hits that jump out. Like even Crunk Ben has the one, you got to hum all their songs. Anyway, that was going to be a little difficult. Do, 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 do. That one right there, right? And when that came on, everybody's like, oh yeah, my jam, right? That never happened for the Sturgill originals in this one. Like I'm looking around the crowd and it looked like some familiar kind of Texan archetypes that were there. There was a bit of a hipster slant that was going on, but it was a little bit all over the place, right? I guess it would be what you would expect the crowd to be in New York City for a country music show.
You briefly mentioned the covers, and I know you sent me a couple of the videos of the covers he did.
Yes.
What was the split between original songs and cover work, and did you mind at all about the
All
split?
right, so first of all, let's be clear. This is a 3-hour show. I forgot to bring that up. It was a 3-hour show. There was room to throw in some of your favorites when you're playing a 3-hour show. Like I use setlist.fm when after I do these to go check this out. They typically do a good job after concerts of getting show stuff from the set list up. They did not do the greatest job on this because a lot of, I guess, what I would call covers were a lot of flourishes that were thrown into other songs. So we got You Don't Miss Your Water, which I think of as an Otis Redding song, but it's a William Bell song. So that's like the first cover. That's track 3. Whiter Shade of Pale. He did that one. He did Purple Rain fairly early in the show, like maybe about halfway through. And I am the toughest audience in the world for Purple Rain, obviously, right? Especially because the live versions that Prince does of Purple Rain, let's be honest, even the original version, the one that's on the Purple Rain album, is a live version of Purple Rain. Little known fact. But everywhere else, he does it for like 17 minutes and it just shows out and everything else. They did this one for about 3.5, maybe 4, right? Somewhere in there. Sturgill did not do the guitar solo. His Estonian slide guitar player, he did it. It was a very good version of Purple Rain. The guitar on it and everything else is very good. It's just weird for Purple Rain to be in the middle of a show. Like, I don't know how you do Purple Rain and then there's something else to do after that, right? Not a judgment of them. That's just who I am. What kind of dude I am. Did LA Woman by the Doors. They cranked with that one. That was going. Here's where it was surprising. Me and one of my buddies have long said, well, we couldn't get a great handle on Sturgill about like how much black music he listened to just from listening to the sound of it and when the influence would come in. Like, you know how the Dap Kings is black music for white people who don't listen to black music, but they still kind of like it. Like they get real paleo about it. Is that the right word for me to use? Right? They go to them cats that sound just like they got piped in from the 1950s. Like that's how they like it, but then necessarily don't like no rap. Okay, so there was a point at which that band was playing a riff, and I can't replicate it for you, but I'm like, I can't figure out what this is, but this sounds very familiar. My brother is like, dude, that's a P-Funk riff. And it definitely, as I heard it, I'm like, I think you're right. And then as I'm waiting for it to go a little longer, next thing I hear is bump, 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 because Sturgill hit a few licks of Sex Machine. Again, not what I expected. Later in the set, while he's playing Call to Arms, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, bum, bum, like, oh, so we're throwing in Jimi Hendrix Machine Gun in here too. Ain't that something, right? So the covers that are listed are one thing. It was the flavor that was added from other songs that had me like, oh, okay, all right, we are even more kindred spirits than I realized.
So you've seen him before, and you obviously have raved about what you love about Sturgill. Where does this performance rank in this times you've seen him and just in general in the shows you've gone to?
Yeah, so I'd seen all the videos and stuff. I hadn't seen him live before. I was supposed to go see him in 2020 for the Sound and Fury tour, but as you may recall, the world shut down. It was a very good musical show. They played the music very well. However, I would have liked a little more of a performance. And when I say a performance, I don't mean a whole lot of tricks and bells and whistles. I'm not saying that I needed a big old thing with the lights and everything else. What I am saying, though, is I read something once that said that the job of the singer is to bridge the gap between the songwriter and the song, to bring those things together. And so, in terms of performance, I think that an artist kind of has two options. Option one is to make it so big that it's just right in front of you, right? Option two is to play the show in a way that brings the audience close to you. But what you got to do to me as the leading act in a show is to bridge that gap. And I think for the kind of music that he does, the way to bridge that gap is a combination of the two. And I think the parts at which, or there were parts of pulling the audience in that he's good at, but he doesn't do any crowd work, right? So it's not like they're talking to you and really engaging the audience. You're not getting that. Going in between songs, I would have suggested doing some kind of flourishes to build some like tension, build some suspense about what the next song is going to be. Because on one level, there were these seamless blends and it's really cool. On another, after you do the promise and it gets real big at the end, I'd love to hear the band start going off. And then next thing you know, 2, 3, 4, and then we go into a whiter shade of pale, and then it lands in a different sort of way, right? So I thought the playing was great. I thought the performing, the audience deserved a little bit more. Like it almost felt like we're dealing with a stage fright sort of situation. Like there were times where he's rocking out, right? And you can see that he's getting into it, playing the guitar and everything else. And it's not like the dude didn't seem like he was enjoying it or the music didn't have that. But I think you give the audience more like with some little small things that they could do to take the show to a different place. It could have gone to a whole other space. But the music itself, my goodness, that is an incredible band that they've got. And being there live, there were a lot of rearrangements that I thought were important. My guy, Miles Miller played the drums for most of the albums, didn't play the drums on the last one for whatever reason, is playing the drums on the tour. If you are like me and did not love that Johnny Blue Skies album as much as you love the other albums, the Johnny Blue Skies songs sound a lot better live with Miles playing the drums, and I don't think that was a coincidence. I feel like Miles gives the band a lot more swing, and that Johnny Blue Skies album does not swing. Swings a lot more live hearing those songs. I think that part is important. I also found myself, like when he's playing the Best Clockmaker on Mars, I heard a funkadelic influence in it that I hadn't heard before. I read him say that making that album, the Sound and Fury album, that there was hip hop influence, and he talked about Eminem, right? And when you hear certain songs on there, like Mercury in Retrograde, you hear the Eminem kind of influence on the lyrics. Okay, cool. But I didn't hear the funk influence that he said that he had. He played Clockmaker on Mars while we're there, and me and my brother are like, yep, that's funkadelic track. We know that sound. We know that vibe. Listen to the rhythms on a lot of those songs. We're hearing James Brown on the one style drumming and rhythms and things like that. The different influences on the music were more apparent to me. I kept telling my brother, like, this is country. He's like, that's not my definition of country music. Like the genre wise, everything was so fluid with a consistent musical energy that I wish the crowd could have matched. And that's why I think some of the more performative aspects could have been tweaked up for that element. So it makes it a little easier. When you got as much music as this dude has and you go to play a 3-hour show, you got to budget your energy, right? So you can't be mad that the first song doesn't melt your face and it doesn't go that way all the way through. We'd all be dead. But also just give people a few more treats to get them up and be like, oh, what's coming next? What's coming next? As opposed to, oh, we just moved into the next song.
So, Bo, any final thoughts? Would you see him again? What's general consensus coming out of that Sturgill concert?
Oh, dude, I'll see Sturgill. Even this Johnny Blue Skies thing that I ain't nearly as wild about, I'll go see that dude play anywhere. I'll go see that dude play anytime because I 100% truly believe he is the best musician working today. That voice, those songs, play the guitar like that, have that band, the ethos that seems to surround all of it. Right now, he's the best, right? And so it was a great show. Just amazingly a great show that also could have been better. And that is a wild thought. The NFL is back in full swing, which means you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite teams only on Prize Picks. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. So make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.